quick second, because we're gonna end up talking about it in the next class even more. We'll let this pop up, make sure it sounds going. It is. I'll move this back a little bit so I can try to get a little bit more picture for anyone that pops up. See me and then me and then me. It's good for the ego. No, it isn't. This is where all this mess is gonna be talked about. I have half of mine to turn this thing on, but it would get annoying. All right, so Tennessee versus Garner, the first distinction here. Still can't quite see it there. Let's move it here. Deadly and then non-deadly. And we've already discussed why we make that distinction. Is that at that point in time, you seized alive, nothing else really matters because you can't undo that one. But it's not like giving something back to their property. So let's see, put it this way, the Garner. Well, what they did is they stopped the fleeing felon rule. And you get substituted, basically exigency. Let's see here. I also want to go to ep.nsuok.edu. They need a blackboard so I can pull that stuff up. So that's an important distinction. We also talked about Graham versus Connor and the reasonableness. That was the last part we left out on, if I remember correctly. My goodness, is there a thermostat in this room? Is it down all the way? One of those things, it's like, good, I'm actually probably gonna have to turn on that fan. Yeah, well, the thing with the heat in here is that this chapter, it's the entire building, and since it's the entire building, it's a very slow system, so it takes like 3 days to turn it off or turn it on. And so if it's gonna get cold again, they don't turn it off and we sweat. Let's stop and frisk. Here we go. All right. Tennessee versus Garner says on use of force, the continuum, legal requirements for arrest with and without a warrant. All right, so that'll be the next topic. So the general rule is +1. We talked about the role of that would be Honor. You're dealing with a continuum because you want to be able to take control of that individual. At the general rule, you're going to have to weigh that on the individual factors associated with that particular instance always. The big though is there danger? Is it reasonable? And is that danger of grievous or deadly in nature injuries? Right, the harm there. How serious is it? If it's a guy walking around with an X-Acto knife stabbing people, it's like, yeah, it's not cool. You don't necessarily want to drop him. You don't have to, don't. If he's trying to kill people with that, then maybe you need to, right? Because if someone knows what they're doing, that thing's really deadly.
I got stabbed from an X-Acto knife.
Yeah, well, it's like, that's a common thing. And I want to say like 3 or 4 years back, they had
how many people are stabbing each other with X-Acto knives?
think of how many people play with X-Acto knives in school. There's a lot of stabbing.
I
Right?
think it's purposeful.
Well, yeah. Or did you not have like chemistry or like biology in like junior high and high school?
It was.
Yeah, we stabbed each other.
Art class.
Yeah, it's high school kids, they stab each other. That's crime. That's gonna be real numbers. It's really what we're.
No, it wasn't playing around. This guy was legitimately a psycho.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you have that too. And so later in life, they end up going into this system,
Yeah.
right? Well, as everyone else doesn't. That's a different thing. We're not talking theories though.
As police officers or as the other type of criminal.
Depends, usually the other. But it really depends, because it depends on when you catch the image. If it's the first stab, that's probably criminal. It's the second one, you might be talking police officer, you just stab me. There's one back for you, right? And so you get some, the good side of violence is a little of it. You have a little bit of here. Violence is necessary to some degree. And if we're gonna have to use it, we know where those lines are, right? Use what is reasonable given the situation, you can step it up to 1 degree, so that way you can take control. When we look at it in the situation of deadly force, only if it's required to stop deadly force or serious injury. When we start talking serious injury, that's a legal one. And so that's You know, the extent of injuries there, recovery time, that's all, those are all the factors that really determine seriousness there. So it's not as always straightforward. When you get into, okay, we're no longer dealing with deadly force, just force in general, this is the rule. That's objective reasonableness. That means a lot. So from the outset, the legal side of this, what you need to consider is the perspectives of the parties involved. Initially, you're going to deal with the officer in the situation who had to use force, and then you're now having to justify it in court, right? As you're going about doing that, the officer is going to give their understanding for the situation as it presents itself. They're going to give testimony, right? There's going to be a lot of testimony between the time it happens in trial, because there's a lot in terms of that process. We'll talk about it a little bit. That's once you start moving beyond the policing side, you start moving to the court side, and there's heavy overlap. You'll still be actively investigated while you're in jail if you've done something that requires investigation. And then you have everything that's involved with the courts and their investigations, the discovery process, all of the pretrial stuff where you're going to be going in and testifying and under oath. And then where you get to go back in trial and retestify again. This where law talked about a small word change between all of those different times you talk about the same thing. That's what I'm going to pick apart and show that you actually meant three different things. And now I can't trust you for anything. You're a liar, right? That's how a lawyer would do that.
Yeah. Wait a minute, wasn't they the liars?
Sometimes they're not sworn to tell the truth. If you think about that in terms of act, again, that's criminal law. Think about the actors there. There's only one person there who's sworn to tell the truth. Everyone else does whatever the hell they want, but within boundaries. But yeah, right. When you're at what you're asking of people in that trial process, the entire process from the people who are prosecutors making the decisions as to whether or not we're going to prosecute or whether we're moving into trial or the trial itself is we're going to judge this person's actions using all of the available information. Seems like a good way to do that, right? At the same time, the person who walked in that situation did not have all of the available information. They did not have that at all. It's like, yeah. And what they had to do is they had to do something that had required an extreme decision in usually what can be fractions of a second. I mean, literally split second. I didn't have time to do this, so I could find the video because there's a really good one from about 7 or 8 years back where it's literally a dashboard camera of a police car pulling up to a guy who's walking. And then as he's walking, you see just a little motion and the officer stops as he gets out. And literally a flash of a second, that motion becomes guns out and point in my direction and we're under fire kind of thing. It's just that fast. And if you know what you're looking for, you can get ready. You won't have reaction time. Reaction time is not how that works. If you actually want to study this and actually get into this, martial arts is a good way to start. But in terms of just looking at it from an overall reaction, like just time ordering process, a lot of the measures that we use across these fields, you'll see that they don't work very well because you start talking response times. There's a whole lot of stuff involved in that. But you start talking about people and their reaction times and force. Yeah, your reaction time's a lot slower than what you think it is. Most of the time, people are planning things out and acting on that. You don't react to the punch being thrown. You react to the shoulder moving or shift in weight. That's the only way you get any opportunity to do anything before you hit the punch in the face. That kind of thing. And so you're trying to judge someone who walked into that while you have none of those pressures and all of the time in the world, because literally they'll make you take all the time in the world. You're on jury duty right now. I get that a little bit. They move slow. Jury duty, the jury duty process. They're moving kind of slow, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they move on their own time frame because they got to handle everything. So hurry up and wait thing. That's a common one though. You'll find in policing too. Most fields, hurry up and wait. Think about that and what it does in terms of people and stress. That itself is its own stressor before you get to the fact that not only is there going to be violence involved, but potentially death. So now you guys start to get a bigger picture of what's involved in some of these fields. Like these are real things that, my God, it's like that. The weight of that should not be underestimated. Okay. Anything else I need to tell you about use of force? Outline the aspects that they judge this on. That's going to be whether the officer had a duty to act, if they acted incorrectly or omitted an act. There was some type of harm involved, and that there's some correlation causation between those factors, right? It used to have intent included. This is the case where they removed intent because an officer's actions were entirely reasonable in both ways. You're dealing with someone who is under the influence of a medical thing, right? They are acting unreasonably, but understandably. And what am I authorized to do? And I have to figure all this shit out right this second. God, how bad can that go? And what do we find is acceptable? This person misunderstood the situation, still handled it as best they could. Did they always have their best face on or their best foot forward? No, that's why one of the guys broke his foot. It's like, yeah. That's the nature of this, though. We're asking people to do something that most of the time, the parties involved don't want you to do. And so there is going to be force. Okay. Arrests, lesser force than the actual force. I think we talked about that one already. Remind me if I did. Seizure, detention, intention, arrest authority, and the understanding. Right. I remember talking about that in terms of arrest authority. Some officers have it 24 hours a day, whether in uniform or not. Some do not. We didn't talk about types of warrants. Here on the outline, if you look at it, it'll give you arrests with warrant versus arrest without a warrant. From the outset, there is no difference. You're just talking time, ordering, and probable cause. What you're really getting is a judge weighs in on this decision. Now you're under good faith. You have an extra protection, right? That's why you do it. You do it for the protection. You take the extra steps for protection, not because it's necessarily required, because it's the right thing to do. You may actually have that. That's another lesson I'm going to stop on for a second. At points in times, there will be decision points. You'll have opportunities to do what is smart, what is best for you, what is best for others, and what is right. You don't care about any of those other ones. You go with that fourth one, what is right, right? Right. The fact that I have to say that should identify that that's sometimes a problem for people. Don't let it be. It's harder to say that. It's easier to say that and put it into practice in the moment. And you'll find that whenever you reach one of those points, you'll not know what to do and you'll remember that conversation. Okay. Arrest warrants, bench warrants, telephonic warrants, John Doe warrants. There's lots of warrants. There's only a few types. Right. So all of them have very specific purposes. And so not only do they meet all of the requirements of a warrant in general, you don't know what those are, look at the Fourth Amendment, they outline those there. They're very specific scenarios, like the arrest warrant is specifically because you're arrested. The factors associated with that. Okay, time is no longer a factor in that warrant, meaning I can affect that arrest warrant as soon as I come across you, no matter where you're at, kind of thing, as long as that justification to be there. Search warrant, you won't run into that same thing. We've already talked about that. Typically, what you'll find is those are issued at trial, kind of things. Like that person did not show up, they issued an arrest warrant, right? Bench warrant, that kind of thing. That's what bench warrant, not arrest warrant. Telephone, you're going after phone numbers. That's the one where you start getting some really interesting stuff with new developments in technology, right? Communications is a hell of a thing. Basically, if you start getting into it, how easy is it to change phone numbers and move things around? How is it I can track what you're doing? How easy is that? Pretty easy. Even if you're taking some steps for whether it's encryptions and VPNs, if you have the right processes and you know what you're doing, it's like that stuff doesn't matter at all. Most people don't even know how to hide that stuff. Like open source intelligence is a very useful tool. If you want to use it in investigations, works. You use the same skill sets you use in methodologies. It's like in there in theory, we're kind of talking about it in the abstract concepts kind of thing. We're doing the same kinds of things. That skill set, once you develop it across, is all domains. It's logic and reasoning. Triangulation. I started talking a little bit about that one for a second. I'll come back to it right now. Okay. So as you're looking up these cases, if you want to really get a full knowledge of it, because these are the highlights, you'll pull up these cases and you'll see that each one of them have links to multiple cases. The more cases that identify these types of cases where there's some critical issue, that's how you identify what's important. Triangulation. It's the same things you use in detective work. Who's telling the truth and who's lying? Well, if I'm talking to multiple people, the more things I can confirm across more people, the more those things add up, right? Now I can start getting into people's heads a little bit. What's your intent here? How many actions have I seen? That kind of thing. Now we're back into here, right? I have to identify what people's actions are, their intents, before I take any actions of my own. So all these things overlap. John Doe warrants, those are ones where you don't know who we're actually arresting, right? Typically you start dealing with those. You also deal with, there's another type of warrant that's got a very triggering. What is it? Not a sneak and peek, maybe it is a sneak and peek. No,
Wait, sneak and peek refers to warrants that I believe were proven and unconstitutional because.
you can do it.
Oh, wait, what?
You can do it to some degree. It's just how you go about it. Yeah, so there are triggering events. So there's certain types of warrants where if a certain thing takes place, and you don't have to disclose what it is, now probable cause is justified as to that corroborating evidence, right? If you think about drug trafficking, there are very specific sequences of events that take place. And if I use that as the method I'm going to establish probable cause, now I've got a whole lot easier way to do it because, hey, I'm just waiting for certain things to be triggered. Right, for a particular person, particular place at this particular time. If you meet all those things, guess what? More than likely, you're trafficking drugs, or you're trafficking people, or you're doing something else, right? And that's how they work that. Let's see, when is a warrant needed? We should probably talk about warrant requirements in general real quick. So if you deal with a warrant, the first place you want to look is the Fourth Amendment, because it will list out specifically the requirements for it. The ones that are of the most importance, person or places to be seized or searched, that kind of thing, needs to be full detail. What items you're looking for, where, when, those types of things. You need to have you need to have probable cause. How do you establish that? Through a sworn oath or affidavit, meaning that someone has put forward their name kind of thing, and the evidence that they have compiled to produce the evidence you need to start this in motion. As you do that, so they've got that, the judge himself or herself needs to be neutral and detached, meaning they don't have their own skin in the game because you want something that's completely on the level. That's kind of hard to do sometimes.
So like, if you're a nephew or.
Nepotism, yeah, avoid that. A good example, I don't know if I've been given this one before. Probably about 15 years ago, there was a judge, I won't say it was it Madio, it started with an M.A. something. He was out of Louisiana. I can't remember what state he was in, operating, but he was an LSU student who hopped on their chat boards and liked to talk about stuff because he liked to feel good about himself. I'm a big time judge who does this kind of stuff. I'm not going to tell you who I am, but I'm going to start talking about some. And so, yeah, it doesn't take long for us to figure out who you're talking about, and it doesn't take us long to figure out who you are. So literally, it'll take me 30 seconds for most. And most of the times, it's like, yeah, those things are tagged. Where is that in? Oh, that's this area. Okay, who from this college is in that area? Let me tell you about some investigation stuff too. We can do that. Ask me about that in a second. Finding people. Forget where I was going with that. Say about finding people for a second. Yeah, there's no disappearing in today's world. I was once given a task of, I know this person, their education would have been somewhere in this area when they were graduating in the 1960s. Last I heard, they're off in the Northeast. I need you to find them. 3 minutes, that's all it takes. This name, this institution, this is the approximate date at which they graduate, and this is the general area. Hi, you're identifiable. That's how easy it is in today's world.
Wait, why were you having to do this?
Well, that's a long story. It was compiling people for this historical thing. We're gathering up people who've been through Kent State. If you know Kent State, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know Kent State, you should look it up.
Kent State, is that the? Oh, yes.
So, yeah. So that's what I was.
The fun. Oh, wait. That's the wrong word. I apologize. That is not what I meant to say.
No, but so that's the kind of thing that we were doing. So I was having to find people.
Yeah, like I knew there were some crazy jobs. I don't think you were bounty hunter was one of them.
No, it's just different tasks you pick up.
Okay.
So triangulation, right? How many points of information you get? How do they add up together? The better you sew them together, the more information you get, the stronger it is, the better it is. All of it's additive, all of it's the same way. Right? All works the same way if you go take research methods, you take theory. If you go and take any of these courses, they'll take those same skill sets, they'll apply it to that. That's that purpose of that conversation and triangulation. The more you can do that, the better your accuracy you get for locations. We're trying to figure out how to fish. Here's where the fish are at. Right? That information is more useful than the fish. Okay. Yeah, I'm hungry now. Not yet. I will be in about an hour.
Just think about something gross like Long John Silver's.
that'll do it. Okay. Ugh. All right, so issuance of a warrant, the judge, that's where they start talking about that. So Judge Maz, I think it was Maz, I keep saying Maz, but it's Madden or something, it's MA, I remember that. So what they had done is they started identifying the fact that they had been involved in it was an adoption series of filings related to a prominent actress who was adopting kids out of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And they were making jokes about that kind of stuff in examination with that person, you know, what they thought of it kind of thing. And so that started getting some attention. It's like, okay, so you got someone who's disclosing information they shouldn't. How far does that kind of bleed go? What kinds of bad things does that guy up to? And so a little bit of digging, not me, this is someone else, but not me, this is parties involved. When somebody got light on them, like, here's all the problems this person is doing. So you had someone who whistled blue. The worst of his offenses was that as judge, he personally took interest in his girlfriend at the time's divorce proceedings. Started issuing arrest warrants for her soon-to-be ex-husband, started having an effect on. It's like, yeah, he ends up in prison.
Man, so you caused the guy to get divorced.
Well, he's already, well, it's like you got whatever caused the divorce, but it's like now you've got all
I'd
the
say
personal
that-
relations and you're directly involved in that. Not only that, you're bringing the entire weight of the government in on that relationship. Yeah, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. He needs to go spend some time and think about that, which is what they did.
I don't think he thought about much of anything.
Yeah, probably not, but he's not gonna do that anymore, I'll tell you that,
Yeah.
right?
So if you don't mind, would you mind talking about the legalities of it, like the legal stuff of adoption real quick?
I don't know all that much about it. I just remember he was disclosing a lot of personal information about it.
Okay.
It was Charlize Theron.
Yeah, like I know there's.
So that would identify
lawyer
who
than
that
just-
person is if you want to look it up.
But yeah, I just knew there was more, like, okay, yeah, like I know that there's more to lawyering than just lying, cheating and stealing, but yeah, I didn't know if he knew anything about that.
Yeah, no, not as much. I haven't looked into that one specifically, but there's.
I think you have enough kids.
Yeah, I don't need any. No, I'm just kidding. Five's a good number. My brother has 10. I'm not competing. I stopped. All right, so contents of a warrant, we've already talked about that. That can vary state to state. It says service of a warrant within or outside of a state. That's gonna be particularly, really what you're talking about there is arrests of persons, and it's gonna vary more on jurisdiction and the severity of the crime. Like how far out of the jurisdiction are you? Right? I don't know if we talk about it in this way in semester, but sometimes I'll do it this way because it's kind of an abstract way to have the same thing. Banishment. We don't do banishment as a punishment officially. Unofficially, sure as heck we do, right? You commit some low level or larcenies or something like that. You get big up enough of a name for yourself in a local area where they're really irritated with you. Okay, warrants issued. Got to move 2 counties over. They're not going to drive that far for that. But if I shot somebody, I'm going to be leaving a lot farther. Going a lot farther distance. Like
Yeah, Mexico.
yeah. Well, it's like if I do, if
So
you
can they issue a warrant for something that's not in their jurisdiction to enforce it? Is that, like you said?
you start running serious issues, and that's kind of the stuff that's going on right now.
They
So-
can't, not for, if it's
Mhm.
outside of their own jurisdiction.
Yeah, and so that's where you start running into complexity. Is where did the crime itself take place? Let's see what that is.
But what you get
Okay,
is
stay fine.
other agencies, so with the age of internet, you can see any warrant issued for anybody, bench
Mhm.
warrants.
So you'll act on it in your own interest because you're trying to identify criminal activity is most likely what'll happen. Because it's like this person already got a warrant, I got a reason for a stop, and let's see what the hell's going on. Because that person's dangerous probably. What'll end up happening is usually it's wherever the crime takes place. Sometimes it's where the parties take place. Depends on the type of crime. Where you really start getting off into the fields is the electronic stuff, because it's like, okay, you might have victim in one jurisdiction, offender in another. The servers that they actually used are somewhere else and might be in an entirely different country. And so it's like you get all over the place really, really quick. Usually it's something so, in theory, we already talked about this a little bit. Yeah, routine activities theory. The crime is the product of the convergence of a target, an offender, and the lack of a guardian, right? So just the combination of a target and motivated offender, you start looking at, those need to be in literally the same place. So the geographic distance starts shrinking real fast. That's why you don't have as many jurisdictional issues as what are possible, because most crime is bounded right here, right now, me and you kind of thing. It's like, you give me your stuff or whatever it is. You know, so it's like, that's where that theory really comes, and that's what it's used for.
Wait, what does the R stand for?
Routine activities theory.
So what
Oh.
what would be the proper way to do that? Let's say you have a crime, and you're right, because sometimes it's not, or let's say a crime happens at a certain spot. But the person that they think did it lives over in this jurisdiction, they need a search warrant.
Mhm.
Okay, how would, what's the proper way to really go about? it? Do you go to that jurisdiction and try to get a search warrant?
I'm gonna give you a flighty answer. I'm gonna say appeal to the spirit of those law enforcement officers. They're gonna want to stop crime too, for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call over there and be like, hey, okay, we're gonna work together on this. Why? Because this spans all of our jurisdictions. That's actually a common way to do it with the online stuff. That's very like, to give you an idea for how that stuff works. About 2 years ago, I saw a pretty big case on this. It caught my attention when it went quiet. It was dark web stuff. So basically what it was persons running on the site for
Sorry about that.
gum. You.
I'll be back.
Just pre-chewed. It's just a little prepared for you. So basically what happened is it was pornography of the worship. And it was an online website on, was it Tor? And so if you're familiar with any of this, how much you guys know anything about the dark web? Okay, we'll talk about that one for a quick second. The dark web works a little bit different than the normal web. It's not indexed in the same way. We can do a search on the internet, it'll tie into the indexed web. What's not indexed, that is the dark web. The specific web browser, you can then access that information, but I won't talk too much about that. From there, what it does is the browser uses, it encrypts your data. How it does that is you become one of those links in the chain, right? So part of your computer is not used for that. And you technically don't have any idea of what's being sent through your computer to some degree. That's just a fun thought to play with. So there's the danger in doing this. So don't do this. But what I did is he wanted to become a millionaire. He did very, very quickly. So what he did is, okay, I have a site, I have a source to get imagery and videos and things like that. I'm going to host them online and make you subscribe for memberships, just like OnlyFans, right? And so, yeah, you start racking up millions of dollars very, very quickly. Problem is, it's all encrypted and you're using data, or you're using even your monetary stream is encrypted, Bitcoin. How do you figure out where things are going? Because the whole point of that is to keep you from knowing who's doing what. Well, you got people who, that's their specialty is, I'm going to think this through. And that's exactly what they did. They identified, they followed them to the point where they found it was all being brought together in one centralized location in a bank in South Korea. They followed it from there. Okay, now we found out where the money went. And I found out who has that bank. From that bank, I got them, I got their data. Now I've got their data. I have a list of all those memberships across all those places. Now I can track that stuff down. You're talking multinational investigations where you end up going. A lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of resources, all to deal with a problem that shouldn't even exist in humanity, right? And so that's what we do, though. And so that's why you need these skill sets in life. Otherwise, I do. All right, so contents of warrants, service within out of state. Actually, I went far beyond that. Time of the arrest. Felony arrest may be made at any time. So basically, I start talking about the seriousness of it. If you have your arrest warrants of serious nature, they'll come get you at any point in time if they can. Be aware of the nature of, again, are you going to forcibly enter the house? You're going to enter the house at all. If it's just an arrest warrant, there's no need to go into the house. There's no need to go in the house. Person's going to come in eventually. Don't go into the house. That's literally the history of, if you look back at those cases, is, you know, if a person's in there, they'll come out. Why are you forcing your way in? Every time that they do that, they get smacked on the hand. That's the wrong action to do. Just wait. Let's see, arrest without a warrant. If you're committed in the presence, yeah, you're going to get arrested. If it's in public places, that has to do, basically what they're trying to keep in that section is the time to get a warrant. Because the warrant requirement is a requirement itself, but we don't stick to it. The main justification is that time element. If you remember back to whenever we first started talking about probable cause, we started talking a little bit about vehicles. Vehicles are mobile. That's why the warrant requirement is to some degree outdated, because our ability to move is a whole lot easier than it was 200 years ago, right? When you get to the next town, it doesn't take me an entire day. That kind of thing. Let's see. When exigent circumstances are present, yeah. Possibility of disappearance, whether that's suspect or evidence. And, well, What's that other item there? I forgot it. The hot pursuit. We've already talked about that one. Yeah. Basically, again, when there is danger, it's an emergency, there's danger. Right? And it says that how many times does it say emergency? And it identifies dangerous situations for it, even talks about entering a home without a warrant. As a general rule, do not. Unless you absolutely have to. Said your home is your most sacred place, then, well, I'd say it is literally your most sacred place. It's more sacred than your body because no one will reach inside your home normally. And this, just being out in the street, you can get stopped and frisked with very low levels of justification needed. What can you do after an arrest? So these are all discussion points where if we have more time, I'd spend quite a bit more on it. Let's start with this one. Okay, you are arrested.
Hi, yeah.
Yes, the cuffs have slapped around those wrists. You've heard the click and the click of the double lock. What happened next?
Hopefully the Miranda rights and hopefully no acorns landing on the roof.
So at some point, we got Miranda. Good. We're not too far from actually moving into that. So that's good. You guys are thinking about that. So Miranda's gonna happen at some point, right? Sometimes it's different. Sometimes it comes up earlier, sometimes it's later. We'll get into why it comes up and why it comes up at all, which will tell you when it should come up. So, okay, what else? Okay, I'm gonna use a phrase here. Cuffed. And then the next one is. You never heard that phrase, cuffed and stuffed?
Stuff.
Oh, that's one of my favorite ones.
That's,
Yeah, so that's what happens immediately on scene after an arrest, right? Those cuffs come out, you hear the clink, right? The next thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna get stuffed into the back of a police car, but not quite. What'll happen right before that is right around in here, you'll have a nice not necessarily, it could be a strip search. I saw a strip up there, so I was thinking the strip searches. We'll get to those. Yes, those, yeah, and like those are fun.
chicken, not fish.
Yes. Mhm. All right, it's a search. Meaning, if you have justification for an arrest, probable cause, then you have every justification for a full search now. And since you're particularly going to be going into my possession, I'm going to want to know what you have on you. All right, that's going to be the first thing that happens. It's going to be getting control of you. From there, as that search expands, so first it's going to be the person themselves. All right, okay, that's your person. Okay.
I got a question about the Miranda.
Yeah, go.
They don't, well, I'm not sure.
They depict it incorrectly, yes.
Well, if a person doesn't say nothing to the officer, they don't have to give them Miranda rights, right?
That's true.
They don't have to give them Miranda rights unless they start spilling the beans.
That's true.
Or if they're in interrogation.
Well,
then-
I'll tell you what the conflict is.
Yeah,
So honestly, you don't need to give it to them at all if you're not talking to them,
no.
right?
No.
But where you want
People
to,
get confused.
where you want to, and why you always see it like immediately, usually it's as these things are going on, or maybe even before, is because you move into something that's called a custodial interrogation. You're now in their custody and asking questions. That's where you need Miranda. If you talk with them at all, you've moved in there, and they're in your custody. So it's like you might not even have this going on, and you've moved well into this territory, and that's where the greatness comes from.
Something you can.
Hold on.
Well,
Yes.
that's, so the biggest deal of it is, as someone working a beat, you're taught to give Miranda as late as possible.
Mhm.
Because spontaneous utterance,
Yeah.
especially with inebriated people. As long as you're not asking questions, you don't have to Miranda.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting there and you're having but it's when you get into asking questions about the incident,
Mhm.
then you start worrying about the admissibility.
Yeah.
Honestly, Miranda, as a cop, as somebody doing the investigation, Miranda kills you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you lose all spontaneous utterances. And as long as you've not Mirandized them,
They
they
talk.
can say whatever they want, and it's admissible. Once you Mirandize them
Mhm.
and they get the opportunity to lawyer up, you
Yeah.
can no longer ask them anything.
Yeah. Because we're gonna be dealing with people who aren't making those connections right. They're not thinking of the fact that what they're saying is gonna be used against them. They're gonna be thinking about the fact that they're talking. They're gonna be thinking about every depiction that they've ever seen in every TV show they've ever seen, which is why you'll always see, hey, I know my rights. Like, no, you don't. Like, no, you don't. Like, my favorite one was someone who started quoting Articles of the Confederation, which predates the Constitution itself. Like, I need to find that video again because it was a lady who was probably all of like 18, 19 years old and was a sovereign citizen type of thing. And that goes just exactly as what you'd expect it was. There's a lot of screaming, crying, kicking, cussing, spitting, biting. You know, it's like that kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, that thing's amazing to watch. Every time I watch it, I leave out there laughing. Not for any of the parties involved, but the fact that somebody had to deal with that situation and somebody caused it and everyone thinks that they're okay. It's like, no, there's a lot of messed up people involved. But that's me being an ass.
You watch any of the cop watcher videos?
Anyway, if I get a chance, they're awesome, especially the ones where they give you critique and they try to get to the legal side of it, because some of them are accurate and really good, some of them are atrocious. But just the stories themselves are.
Wait, are you talking about about the arrests themselves or the people giving commentary on the
All of
arrests?
it. Yeah, because even the commentary, it's like you can't trust it. You'll find people who are commenting online all over the place. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them are really, really bad. Most of them will have degrees. But yeah, there's a thing for it.
And like communications.
Well, not just communications, you can have people who are lawyers. It's just now they're not really talking in their specialty. They have a lot of their specializations, like civil law. They're talking criminal because it gets people's attention. Like, yeah, and so in the end, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, who cares about adoption law or whatnot?
Mhm.
Batman?
Yeah, maybe. But all right, so back to this. So whenever you're going through this process, we'll talk about Miranda later. There's a lot of really good conversations. The big one is with this one. This is only what people say. It's not like I have that option of going and finding tangible evidence, right? If I'm looking for something, it's really easy to stop a search and you then resume it and still be there. As soon as that communication cuts off, it's really, really hard. And that's why it's that useful, but there's a lot more to it than that. We'll get to it. That's a fun one. But you'll start here. So the cuffs come on at some point, maybe it's after the cuffs or it's while they're being put on. That person is going to be searched, right? You got those cuffs on them, you're gonna look for anything that's dangerous, of course, anything that's criminal evidence, that kind of stuff. The next thing you're gonna do after you've searched that person is what?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
What will you do after you search this person? You've got cuffs on them, their pockets are now empty. There's no gun in their waistband, there's nothing in their trousers except for a little bit of weapons because of what you've done.
Secure.
Yeah, so the next thing is you're probably gonna go up here, right? Depending on the nature of that incident itself, it's like, you know, how many people are involved. You might have multiple people involved. You start taking care of the next stages, which you start looking around that person, right? Because around that person is a whole lot of opportunity for them to hide things that they had on them, right? Whether that's things that represent immediate danger to you or someone in the vicinity, AKA bomb, knife, gun, whatever. It's like, yeah. Plus all the evidence related to the stuff that you were dealing with already, right? You're something related to a drug thing. Do they start tossing the drugs? That kind of thing, right? This first area, pretty straightforward. You're dealing with a person that's securing arrest. The next area, that's the next thing we need to talk about. How far does that search extend? If you're going to start looking around that person, you're dealing with physical space and it actually expanding. How far do you look? How justifiable is it?
How far could they have thrown the drugs?
Maybe, right?
Or could
How
it
did
have
this
rolled
progress?
downhill?
Yeah,
Was it a pill? Could it have been dropped out of their pockets during the chase?
So those are all factors, right? You got the ones tied in the position itself. We're trying to identify overall rules. Typically what they'll say is your first level wingspan. Well, that's directly within my span of control. So if you're arresting me, I'm going to want to see everything that was within my span of control immediately. Why? Maybe potential danger again, but definitely evidence. Can you go beyond this? Yes. But again, that's going to be dictated by those circumstances, right? To give you an example of where something like that would and would not fly. The drugs went flying. Yes, that would fly, right? If they didn't, you got no reason for that kind of thing. Let's say it's my favorite is a hot pursuit because it makes it really, really clear, right? Person was doing drug transactions right here on this street in front of the house, right in the open.
Right.
I'm,
You know, it's having
yeah.
a good time.
He made me about a half a block away, I'm about 3 houses away, and he ran inside and I got his ass about 2 rooms in, right? That's how fast I was booking it. Right, so I've got him down. Okay, now I'm in there. I've got him, I've searched the immediate wingspan and I'm inside a house. How far, what can I search? And now I'm dealing with that house again, right? That's the protected one. Right, so is it every room I crossed into as I was tracking this person down? Is it not just every room, but every area you could have reasonably thrown something, right? And so you start literally dealing with literal space, and now it becomes a whole lot harder to figure out just how far this goes. You have to dictate it by the circumstances and that general rule of what's under someone's immediate control. If they pass through it, odds are you're probably gonna be okay. Be a lot better practice to stop and go get a warrant for the whole house, that kind of thing.
So wait, what if there was like another person in the house who could just like move the drugs?
You need to secure them, right? So that's gonna be another part of that arrest, that who gets arrested and what thing takes place. They'll talk about it across arrests of persons and seizures of seizures of things kind of thing, but probably the place to really talk about is when you're doing seizures of things, because I'm gonna have a search warrant for a place and there's gonna be multiple people there. What's gonna happen is they'll have to leave and sometimes we'll cuff them, right? And so they're seized for that time. And so there's all of the aspects of multiple people getting seized while you're conducting this official function, that search. Can't spit with it. And so when you start looking at seizures, how far does that expand into what situation? Varies drastically. Remember back to first, I think it's one of the first chapters we were talking about. Okay, officer says, stop right there. Yeah, you stop right there. Your friend standing next to you on the street, he can still walk, right? If you're in a car and he decides, I'm just gonna pop the door and start walking, he's gonna get tackled, right? The situation matters here. Be the same thing if I were on a bus, right? If I'm on a bus, I'm with my friend talking, police officer walks up, starts talking to my friend, tells him he can't leave. Can I get up and go? That's a distinction I have to make. And if I don't know how it works, I don't know which answer I have. Am I free to get up and go? Or am I stuck right here? It's a vehicle. I don't know. I'll leave that one for you guys to think about, because that's one of those situations where it's not exactly clear. Okay. What you can do after an arrest warrant, of course, search the area of immediate control. Then when they say area of immediate control, it's like this is if you're in space. If you're dealing with a car, typically wingspan as you're talking about that whole passenger area. And we start dealing with cars, depending on what you got going on, that may include the trunk too, right? And it's not just gonna be the passenger area itself, it's gonna be inside of those places that can reasonably hold whatever it is you're looking for. So it's like that lock quadrant, maybe the fact that it's locked makes a difference, maybe it doesn't. The fact that it's in the glove compartment rather than in the floorboard doesn't really matter. Right? It's gonna be whether it's locked and accessible.
So that word reasonable comes up a lot.
Yeah, and that's
Like,
why
it's gotta be reasonable, but you gotta have something to back up why.
exactly. You have to explain yourself. The
Right.
better you can do it, the better you are. And that's why it's always additive in nature.
Yeah.
Always. And so it's like the processes through which you go through and document these things is just as important as the fact that they occurred. Right? Because without the documentation, show that they occurred, they did. Right? That'd be like your police reports and saying, I can show you a video where a guy is fleeing. It's a clip video. You've probably already seen it before. Police interaction, something happens, guy flees, officer drops something, pulls out his gun, fires 7 times in the guy's back. Guy drops. As you see the rest of the video, you can see stuff getting moved around. When you read the report, it's like, yeah, there's some errors related to that stuff, but what the big error was is not the officer who shot the guy, the officer who responded to the scene indicated that they performed CPR for policy and protocol on the person afterwards, while the video shows quite clearly that never happened, which means now you have 2 people who are lying there, right?
Wait.
Now you got a much bigger problem.
Wait
That's
a
the
minute,
inductive
how, would
process.
EPR even help when you have 7?
No, but it's part of the policy and procedures. It's one of those things to reduce legal liabilities. If you don't do it, you open up the organization or yourself. And in that case, they had policies to cover the organization, so they opened themselves up for more criminal and legal activity, I guess is the good way to put it. So there you go. If you're dealing with the car, you're talking basic passenger area kind of thing. All right. We're out of time. So we'll pick up with things we're still doing, and then we'll talk about some of that other stuff like protective sweeps and that kind of
You have
stuff.
assignment again here.
Right now, I think the last thing I was grading in here were the exams, which should be graded now. Midterm grades, I think are due this week. I'd have to go back and look at that. So I'm gonna be updating those grades. Everybody's doing really well. For here, I need to post out some, like another quiz and assignment. So you guys are doing fine, you're cooking with gas. Let's see, in terms of moving forward and things that you want to do. I don't know, what's on your guys' minds? What do you want to use this class time for besides learning? Don't just look at it as learning. If you're looking at it just as learning, you forget that education is also work that you pay for. So what do you want to be learning?
Second.
Okay, be thinking about that. Someone put a
Current
list.
events.
Well, it's like you got some current events, but it's also like, okay, be thinking about what directions you want to be taking in terms of skills, in terms of careers, right? Aim for the career, then identify the skills, come talk to me. Like if you send emails recently, you send me emails? No, there's someone in our next class that said, I'm trying to make sure it was. I'm gonna go check my email, that's what that is. But that's exactly what you should be doing, is identify the topics that interest you, start there. And we'll identify, okay, these are the careers you're looking at. If you want to do research on it, here are the areas that you have to do it. Well, something else, we'll work on that too, right? Cool. Well, I will catch you all later. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so I don't want to see what's over.
Spirit.
So,
Together.
well, I play softball on my left shoulder, so I'm on my phone arm.
Okay. So you got
But
something.
yeah, well, what's my name? My right one last year. So, yeah, so I just tore my left one. Anyway, I just want to let you know that I have a muscle on Wednesday and then like I'm just getting surgery in like the near future. So I just want to let you know, so I'll probably either not be in class
Okay.
or, you know, all that
All right, well,
stuff.
stay in touch if it ever feels like, because I try to update all the video stuff, so
Yeah.
there, but it takes me about a week. If it feels like I'm falling behind something, or you just missing something, just reach out, let me know.
Sounds good. In like the future, I'll probably have like a week long where I'm like, you know,
Recovering?
online or something.
Yeah, recovering's a big thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I will get with you on office hours. I am